Well, thank you for those of you that tuned in. I've been running this for quite a while now, but recently we've really seen an uptick in activity and the number of people coming in. So I thought as we start getting bigger, it was time to take stock of where we are, where we've been, and where we might be going, and make sure we're ready for that. So really, I'm just going to go over a bit of who I am, what this thing is that I seem to have started, where we're at right now, and my thoughts on the future, which may not be aligned with everybody's, which is why I want to get this out there so people can actually feedback. Oh, hello, we have someone else coming in. Bart. Oh, hello, Bart. So yeah, I'll kick off. So hi. I didn't do the fancy background thing. Sitting in the office is quite sweltering. Actually, I've turned the AC off because it gets very noisy. Yeah, so quick agenda. I'm just going to go over the past, a bit about me and how we got to where we are, and who the Watsons were, which hopefully most of you are fairly aware of. A bit about where we're at the moment and how we got there, and then, as I was saying, what I think the future could look like. But I think we're at a point now where we need to discuss and align on that. So for those who couldn't make it, I will pass some of this out. I don't want to be running this thing according to my vision and leaving everyone behind. If this is going to be sustainable, it has to work for everybody. So, and then at the end, discussion. But if there's questions on the way, just throw a virtual hand up or whatever. So a bit about me. That's me grinning there. So first off, you're probably disappointed with my accent. Sorry. A friend of mine is the chief of Clan Irvine, and whenever he posts a video, the first few comments are always, "Why haven't you got a Scottish accent?" But yeah, I don't have, because I was born in London. My father's family were there for a couple of generations or so. My mother's side, actually, so my grandmother was the secretary of the British Genealogical Society, and my aunt was an archaeologist who took over research. So my mother's side is research back to the sort of 15th, 16th century, and they didn't move much at all. They were kind of from central England, an area called Bedfordshire or Nottinghamshire, around there. And I didn't really pay much. I mean, I used to love going there and hearing all the old family stories of my mother's side, and I thought one day my father's side will fall into line. And actually, in 2004, I went for a travel jab. I've been working all over the world, and I needed a vaccination to go somewhere. And the nurse who stuck it in said, "Oh, a member of Clan Watson." And I had no idea what she was talking about. So I did a bit of research, and that's when I found out that actually my family name is a Scottish one. So I started to do a bit of research. I quite quickly found a couple of Clan Watson societies, and I started doing my own research and finding stuff on my own. So I built an early website. This was the clanwatson.co.uk that I was using until quite recently. I primarily built that because I wanted to pull other people in. I thought I can't be the only one looking at this. So if I start posting stuff, then other people will pick up on it, and maybe we can start a bit of discussion. And that dragged on for a long time, and now we're at where we are, but I'll cover that in a moment. But what I cheekily did was I noticed the other Clan Watson societies closed down, so I jumped in and called myself the Clan Watson Society, and we'll cover where that's at in a moment. So as I say, there were two other societies that I know of. There was the Clan Watson International Society, run by a lovely woman called Elaine Watson Qualley, who was based out of the US. She was doing what she could. I think it was very much a one-woman band, so she was issuing little laminated membership cards. There wasn't a lot going on, but I do think they had some gatherings that they attended. But unfortunately, her husband fell into ill health, followed by her. And I think, unfortunately, they've both passed now. But that society stopped operating quite a long time ago. There was also a Clan Watson Society of Canada, and they were very active back in the day. Well, I think around the 80s and 90s, they were probably very active. They were attending a lot of things. They were popping up all over the place. They were doing a lot of research. They had a very comprehensive website, and they even sent a delegation across to Scotland to meet the Douglases, who, through their research, they identified as potential heirs to the chiefship. I had some discussions with the Douglases who weren't very interested. But then they started to wind down conspicuously, and until quite recently, they had a placeholder website that had actually cannibalized some of my text from my website, and they were using that on theirs, which was a little cheeky, with no credit either. But now they've completely vanished from what I can work out. But it leads me to think, these websites have, I think these societies have stopped working because the people associated with them got too old and too sick, and there was no progression plan, no succession plan. So I'm hoping I'm a while away from this yet, but I don't want this to be another flash in the pan. There's a lot of work been going on, a lot of stuff on the internet now that we've been posting. We've got a research group. I've got some other guys helping with some stuff. So, but it's all reliant on me at the moment, and that's not a good position to be in. So a rhetorical question at the moment, and hopefully it'll be a rhetorical question for a good few years. Why are we not moving? Come on. So just a quick recap on who were the Watsons. So as we know, it's a name that's originated in Scotland, sort of southeast Scotland, northeast England. It's a patronymic name, which means it's not tied to a particular place name or a particular ancestor. It's actually just short for son of Walter. So you can see it pop up wherever there was someone called Walter. What we do see is the earliest records we see of Watsons in the UK are around what's now Midlothian. So originally east of Edinburgh, there was a family called the Watsons of Cranston Riddle. From about the 14th century, we see them mentioned. Then they vanish, and shortly afterwards, the Watsons of Sockenham pop up just to the west of Edinburgh. A historian from the 19th century has connected those two, but we haven't seen any proof for it. It seems to be a supposition based on them being the only prominent Watsons in the area. But it's as good as we've got, but until it's confirmed, that's just a supposition. The Watsons were major landowners at some point, and they were hobnobbing with the great and the good. So a lot of the famous names, Douglases, Ramsays, Hamiltons, Hopes, all married into the family at some point. We also see they popped up in other cities, Dundee, Glasgow, Aberdeen.
Hot, buddy. Oh. You need to go outside? Come on.
Oh, the dog's going out. Yeah, so we see them popping up all over the place. We have some suggestions and some evidence that some of these clusters we see were linked genetically. And we even see them into England, linked by marriage, as far afield as Jamaica. So they seem to have been following the British Empire as well. The next question is, were they really a clan? Excuse me. So we can say they weren't a Highland clan, and for many people that rules them out as a clan. We can say they had a chief who was formally recognised by the Lord Lion, and for other people, that means they definitely were a clan. Now, the Lord Lion's made it quite clear he doesn't judge on who is a clan and who isn't. That is a matter for historians and the discussion that goes around it. So I have my views on this, and there are strong feelings either way, so I'm going to stay out of that particular discussion at the moment. If we ever get a chief of the name or commander, then that will be an edict they'll have to make. But my last question there, does it really matter in this day and age? So there's no such thing anymore as clans that rampage around the Highlands, slaughtering people left, right and centre and forcing their daughters into arranged marriages to get alliances. So nowadays, all the clans are represented by societies, the clans and the families. They all look very similar. They are basically global social networks that bring people together to celebrate their shared heritage, to celebrate the history of the lands that they came from. Many of these people have ancestors who were forcibly displaced or displaced by other bad circumstances. And I do see a lot of a longing to connect with their ancestral home. And that's really what all the societies do now. So the clans no longer exist as they were. You're not going to get a chief in this day and age clicking his fingers and having everybody joining forces to go and slaughter the neighbouring clan. Doesn't happen. So it's less relevant nowadays. A lot of people get very attached, though, still to which name is a clan and which isn't. But it's not a debate I'm going to get into now. I'm happy to have that debate over a couple of beers sometime. And there are people that forcibly disagree with me, and I'm used to that. Where are we now? This graph on the right is tells a story to me. This is why I've really started kicking off this piece of thinking. 2009 is when I set up the Facebook page, and for a few years we trickled along. But what you'll see from about 2012, I slowly started to pull in some members, and some of those are still quite active to this day. And then I think we see either the COVID effect or the Outlander effect, or both. But around 2019, there was suddenly a big kick in interest. I think even without that kick, we probably would have eventually gone to where we are now, which is a sort of declining exponential, if you like. So the Facebook group isn't any kind of official membership. It's not a recognized statistic. It's not bringing in any revenue, which is fine. But it, for me, does show there's a lot of interest in what we do. And that interest is still skyrocketing. At the moment, we're at 369. I would very much expect we'll be up around the 500 mark, if not by the end of the year, certainly next year. Another thing I've done recently is I've been researching my own line and that of the chief for quite a few years, and I thought, as a tester, to see whether there's an appetite for people to actually contribute money to this thing, I would start a little research fund. So now we have a group called the Clan Watson Supporters, who chip in a little bit of money, whatever they can afford, whether it's £1 or 5 or 25 or whatever, whether it's a one-off, whether it's monthly, it's entirely up to them. But we now have a fund that sits at just over £500. And we are about to start allocating that to try and progress our research. So things we struggle with are accessing records and then reading them once we get them. I don't know if you guys have read 16th century handwriting, but it is not any English that I recognize. There are people out there that translate that for quite a modest cost. So we will start spending that money soon. The new website's up and running. I'm not 100% happy with it. It's run through some software called TNG, which is great for managing the database of ancestry. Everybody's details are in there and linked, and you can see those on the trees. But to produce a dynamic, exciting, vibrant website, it's a bit challenging. So I've signed up to Wix lately. I'm trying to get my head around that. So I'm going to try and get a phase 3 of the website up and running soon. One thing I've also done is I've joined some societies. So COSCA is Bart's little group in the US. CASOC is the Canadian equivalent. And then SHAC is the Australian equivalent. And these are all umbrella societies that pull together the clan and family groups. So I've got our name up on all of those just to try and reach out and pull people in. And I'm advertising their events as and when I become aware of them on the website and sometimes on the Facebook page. One thing that's quite exciting is we've now started to attend gatherings again in the US. Big thanks to Michael there, who's been out as the Clan Watson warrior, throwing his hammers around, and all the other good stuff. He's producing some great photos that are going up on the Instagram, carrying around the new banner that we pumped out. So he's got a great looking little stall now. Be good to get some more. I guess Bart sees this as well, but we can only attend functions and events if we have people willing to volunteer and put the time in, and I will support you with that. So anyway, that's where we're at the moment. But it raises a few questions. So we've got this momentum now. How do we maintain it? That's at the moment the least of my worries. But really what's important to me is preparing for the future and making it sustainable. So with this rapid growth in people turning up, we can either stay as a Facebook community and people will come and go, or we can actually turn this into something that hooks people in and makes them want to stay, and importantly, makes them want to get involved. And to do that, it has to be scalable. It has to be something we can manage with a small number of volunteers. And it has to be self-financing at some point. So these are all part of that sustainability piece. In terms of the future, so first part of making it sustainable. So apologies if you don't like the new corporate speak, but all organizations now will have a set of values, and they'll use those to build some strategic pillars, and those will support the mission statement. So I came up with these a while ago, battered them around a bit, and this is what the membership have agreed is a decent starting set of values, pillars, and the mission statement. But these things can evolve, so I'm not saying these are fixed, but it just gives us a little bit of focus and something to act as an anchor as we do potentially explode in terms of numbers. I've also drawn up a short-term growth strategy on that. That's based on the strategic pillars, just to try and put a bit of structure in as we transition from a group of interested individuals into a full-blown, hopefully, society. But one thing we'll need to do in order to make that happen and to make it scalable is to put in a structure that's driven by these values and our pillars and the mission statement, and is scalable and gives us some sort of oversight and control of things. What do I see it looking like? So I've trawled the net quite extensively. I've looked at nearly every clan and family society I can find to see what they do. And there's a fairly tried and tested model. I'm not going to try and run everything as this thing grows. We will need regional chapters. They'll need to be at least semi-autonomous, taking initiatives, organizing their own things, probably having some local funding, having people that can answer queries, that can take notes, that can manage accounts, that can act as a chair. I'd like to see more regular events, online and in person. So this is the first one I've run. I'm a bit guilty of not doing something earlier. I know there's a few people who are quite interested to share stuff with the group. It doesn't have to be Clan Watson related. There's, Joanna in Scotland is quite keen to run something on historic dress, for example. I know Scott was also keen on running something on the Watsons of Cranston Riddle, potentially. So anything anybody wants to do, they feel that people would like to hear about, then I'm keen. I've got this channel now. I'm quite happy to stage a meeting and run something. In person would be good. I don't think we quite have the numbers yet to arrange any sort of global meetup, but I would very much like to see more people turning up at events. And for that, as I say, we need people to act as focal points. What you'll see the Clan Society now, and Bart's always banging on about this, is you need a very good website to pull people in. It has to be engaging, it has to be concise. I've already taken out a YouTube channel. It's empty at the moment, but that's in preparation. One thing I noticed with these things is as soon as you start to get attention, people will go and take out everything they can in your name to make it harder for you to do it and try and sell it back to you. So I've bought up lots of Watson website domains. I've taken out the channel, the Twitter, the Instagram. I've got all of that covered. Longer term, we need to put in place a committee and a board. Really, to be sustainable, we need to convert to a registered charity at some point. It's a big commitment and it's a lot of work and it needs more than one person. In the UK, you do need a committee that has to sign off on accounts every year. You need to have a charter. You need to have a few things in place. It's not just a matter of me deciding I'm a charity and running with it. It's a formal legal structure. And I believe it's the same in the US. And what we're aiming at with our research is to try and find someone who will put his hand up. First of all, that's eligible, that is acceptable to the membership and acceptable to the Lord Lion and interested in becoming a new chief. Failing that, we'll go for a commander. And I think that's critical if we're to maintain momentum, but also do it in a consistent way and have a set way of operating, a set understanding of who we are. What I see is the societies with a chief or a commander do tend to have that galvanizing focal point that pulls them together. Rhetorical question for now, but we'll discuss this at the end. What do the members want? So this is kind of what I'm thinking we could be going towards. But again, I don't want to just pursue my vision with blinkers on. I want other people to be brought into this and feel they're part of it. And it's not just my hobby. In terms of organization, this is something I've thrown together based on what I've seen from other societies. So I see a central organization that's purely there to ensure consistency across the regions. Some societies that don't have this, you'll find they have different societies in different countries that don't work together and actually sometimes actively work against each other in terms of the messaging on their side. If we want to get a commander, if we can't find a chief, we very much have to show that globally we are one family, not a set of splinter factions all doing their own thing. As I said earlier, the regional chapters will need some autonomy. I really can't see the central organization controlling everything. It's just too big an ask. And it also takes away that buy-in that you need from local volunteers. If they are being told what to do all the time, they will switch off. These people need to be responsible for running their own chapters with guidance and material provided and web support and whatever from central. I would anticipate that central organisation would be UK based. And probably if there's a UK chapter, we'll run it through there as well. Again, open to debate. I think in terms of trying to find a commander, it will be easier if we have certainly a global chairman or figurehead who is based in the UK, and probably Scotland. You see I've got an empty box at the moment for president. Actually, I call myself president because, well, basically I'm paying for everything and I set everything up. So I can call myself what I like. But once we have a formal society, that president box will be reserved for a chief or commander, and then we'll go back to a standard committee with a chairman who's voted in and other positions that are voted in on a biennial basis or whatever. So that's my suggestion for an organisation, and I'm sure this will evolve once we get feedback and people in. And you run a society with who you've got, so we'll have different people who can do different things, and we'll create boxes for them in a way that works cohesively. This will probably be a contentious topic at some point, but if we are going to manage this thing long term, and if it's going to outlive me, it has to run itself, and to do that, it needs funding. This is a suggestion. Again, I've thrown some numbers in because at the moment there's, if we're honest, not much of a membership offering. But so at the moment, I don't think we're ready to actually charge a fee for everyone who wants to show an interest. But as we start to arrange more events, if we start to do online seminars and webinars that are well attended, and certainly as we get towards becoming a charity with a committee, we will need to be raising funding. And at that point, we will need to have a paid membership subscription. That doesn't mean if you can't pay or won't pay, you don't get access to anything. But it does mean we'll have to start having some members-only services. Otherwise, there's no incentive for people to pay up. But I very much hope that people who can't or won't pay will still be able to get something from it. So there's a suggested list of what you will get for different grades of membership. Basically, paid members, only full paid members will be able to vote when we start getting to elections. They will get priority for research. They will get discounts if, once we've got a clan shop up and running, we'll have a members only site, and that will have more material available than you will get on the public facing site. And it will have some how-to guides. It will have a lot of links to researching your family history. We'll put a lot more stuff on that. Anyway, that's a proposal again. People don't like being asked for money, but at some point it has to happen. So again, I will open for discussion. Moving on to the chief. So we are at an advantage because the Watsons have previously had a chief. That makes it a hell of a lot easier to get another one. Demonstrating that you are a cohesive family unit with a massive amount of numbers who all act as one under the guidance of a single individual is not easy if you've never had a chief before and you want to get one. Having a chief means that the Lord Lion kind of considers you as a sleeping family or a clan that once had a chief but no longer does. It's something we are progressing. That's what our research is aiming at. We believe we found the closest eligible living heir to the last chief. We also believe he will not have any interest whatsoever in taking up the chiefship because he is a Douglas, and there are several factions of the Douglas family all vying for the chiefship of the House of Douglas, and they have been for at least a couple of generations. I don't see that ending anytime soon. To be the chief of a name, you have to carry that name, which means Mr. Douglas would have to change his name from Douglas to Watson. He's several generations removed from the last Watson, and I honestly can't see that happening. The question I would have for the Lord Lion is, are we allowed to even consider a commander or someone else with a chief if the eligible heir is still alive? I don't know. I don't know if they have to formally renounce their intention to run for chief, or whether it just lies dormant until a living descendant does want it. But we'll find out. But as I said earlier, I think it would be good to have a chief, and there's a few of us that agree with this. The chief would provide a galvanizing focal point. It would give us someone, the Watsons around the world, and name variants could rally around. It's also an authority. I'm not an authority. I'm just someone who reads stuff on the internet and in books. So, but the chief does have authority. So yeah, the research is progressing. We think we found someone. Big thanks to the Clan Watson supporters who aren't here, I think. But They are the ones who've contributed funding. But I am about to start some discussions with the Court of the Lord Lion. I've already written a draft letter that I'm running through some of the guys to talk about research, what we found, and to ask about a way forward. But anyway, we are progressing with that. So what's next? We are growing the society. That's happening anyway, in terms of people interested and signing up to the Facebook and the website. If we can increase our presence at events, we can actually bring in more people that have a genuine interest. And for that, as I say, we need volunteers. I know some of you already volunteer. I'm very grateful for that. I know some people can't volunteer. That's fine. But the more people that come in, I'm hoping the more people will get that will volunteer. As we get the volunteers, I need to build some support mechanisms for them in terms of what a convener does, and what material they need. And again, Bart's very, very helpful for this. The Costco website has got some great resources on that I get access to. There will be other kinds of ambassadors out there as well, people that are attending events. I need to give them some consistent messaging on what to say, how to drag people our way. One thing I find with this is everyone's got their own version of Scottish history and clan history. I want to make sure that people are reciting our version in terms of what we've researched and what we've shown is true and what isn't, rather than their own particular interpretation, although you can't be too strict on that. It's more about drumming up the interest. As I said, there'll be a centralized organization. So one of the ideas would be that we have standard materials. So anyone across the globe would recognize our society. We'd have the same logo, we'll have the same font, the same colors, the same graphics, the same messaging. I don't want us to turn into one of these groups where every country has a different organization that looks nothing like the next one and has competing messaging and different graphics and a different name, and a different ethos. I've already talked about the website. I am slowly, as I get round to it, adding more pages and revising stuff already on there. Once this research is done, I'll add some output from that. Not everything, because the guys that have chipped in get first priority on what comes out. So it's only fair that I share most of the stuff with them first. But at some point, I will start to drip feed some of the other stuff onto the site. We need to really leverage the associations we're members of. So as I said, Costco's got some great resources, but what they also give us is reach. So we're on the website now. There are contact details on there. And I'm also speaking to some of them about how we can get some of our flyers in their tents if we can't get people at the events they go to. Also talking with Bart maybe about some joint sponsorship, if we can add little adverts or something in some of the flyers that we can't attend. But that's ongoing, but we need to make more of it, especially in Australia. I mean, North America, if you look at the plan map I put together, we've got a lot of members. But let's try and get more. Research is carrying on, so already carrying on with that. I've talked about the chiefship. The other thing we're trying to work out is exactly how far the Watsons went as not just the name, but actually the people connected to the Watsons of Stockton, which is the chiefly line. We do see hints at connections between a lot of the primary clusters of Watsons in history and the Stocktons, and we're trying to uncover validated evidence for those. So you'll see a mention in a book, or you'll see marriages between one family and two different branches of the Watsons that are very close. These are all hints that these branches knew each other or were related. We also see some of them from different parts of Scotland recording their arms with the Lord Lion at exactly the same time, one after the other in the books. That's a strong hint that they all knew each other. And the arms are very, very similar, only very slightly different. So again, we see hints that they were related or knew each other. We are trying to actually find evidence that lets us draw a boundary around how far this nuclear family went. Formalizing the society, another thing, as we grow, as I said, we need to formalize the society, but that also not just putting positions in, we need to actually tell the people in those positions what their job description is. And again, this will be fairly fluid depending on who is in what position, but if we can standardize some of them, that's great. Something I spoke about with the Buchanans when they had their clan parliament, they were talking about how do they get succession from one generation to the next. I said, well, one thing you need to do is start writing down the stuff you do to make your society work, and capturing it in standard procedures and policies. It all sounds very, very boring. But what you'll find with some of these societies is one generation takes over and goes, oh, what do we do now? Because there's nothing been left for them on how to run a society. And so they'll spend 10 years trying to reinvent things that don't need reinventing. So as stuff works or stuff doesn't work, I'm going to try and capture that as we get bigger, so that we've got a way of handing on knowledge to the next people who come in to run this without them having to clutch at straws. I've also started looking at how we incorporate as a charity, but I think we're still some way off that yet. But we need to know what that looks like in order to steer towards it at some point. And I've spoken about the Lord Lion and the commander, but if we can't find anyone who's eligible to take the chiefship, we'll start asking if we can have a clan commander. That probably won't be so easy, because I suspect 36 people will put their hands up and say, I want to do it. It's not a glamorous job. It's a lot of work, and it's very selfless, because your main aim is to actually find somebody who will be the chief, which isn't you. But I think a lot of people like the kudos potentially associated with that anyway. And that kind of takes me to the end of that part. I did have some suggested discussion points, which I wrote about a month and a half ago, which may no longer be valid. So let me flick back to there. First of all, does anyone have any questions or feedback on that? Does everything sound reasonable, or do you guys have a burning desire to see something different?
Sounds good to me.
Hey, you want?
This is Barry. I'm not quite sure what the role of a commander is. I think you kind of hinted at it there, but I've never heard of the term before now.
Okay, so a clan commander is a clan or a family who previously had a chief or want to have a chief. What they can do while they're looking for a chief is they can ask the Lord Lion to recognize somebody who's nominated as a commander. Now, that person has to be put forward by the family. It's not someone the Lord Lion proposes. So what they want to see is a few things. There are some criteria. The first one is that the whole family, or at least all the representatives of that name, are seen to coalesce around one candidate. So that's probably going to be our biggest challenge. They also want to see that you have quite an established society in terms of the numbers of people you have and geographic distribution and distinct groupings of people of that name acting as a family in different countries. So this is one reason we need to grow the society if we want to petition for a commander. Commander's role is twofold. One is to continue to rebuild the clan. So historically, if a chief was killed and there was no successor, the commander would be nominated by a small group of armigers. These are arms bearers who were loyal to the chief. So they would have what they call a derfine, which is a family convention, and they would nominate somebody to take over running of the clan or the family until such time as another chief could be found. In modern days, that person's role is to build the clan up again, maintain a focus on building membership and running things. But a large part of his role is to turn over every single stone he can to try and find a successor to the chief in terms of an eligible heir who's genetically descended from either the last chief or the last chief before that. So what that means in modern times is you have to not just demonstrate that someone is descended from a previous chief, but demonstrate that everybody else who could have been descended before him is not alive anymore. So you have to prove that all previous lines from the chief have been extinct or extinguished, whatever the term is. It's a fairly thankless role because you're basically, you're doing a hell of a lot of work, not really for yourself. You're doing it for the family or the clan, and your job is basically to try and find a new heir whilst keeping things running. Now, there is a to that. So after 5 years, you can petition the Lord Lion for an extension, which he doesn't have to give. So after 5 years, if you've done nothing apart from swan around saying I'm the commander, he's probably going to say no. But if after 5 years you can demonstrate that the clan is running and the family is running and there's a lot of people in it and you've got distinct chapters and you're very active and the search for an heir is continuing or has been rigorously exhausted, Then he can give you another 5-year extension. After a second lot of 5 years, so after 10 years in total of having a commander, you can then petition the Lord Lion to have that commander recognised as chief. So it's 10 years of hard slog if somebody volunteers to be a commander and wants to be a chief. It's not a case of wearing a feather in your hat and saying, I'm a commander, and then swanning around to places looking important. It's not that kind of job. In fact, you can't even wear a feather. So, but it is, it's hard work. You have to demonstrate progress to the Lord Lion, otherwise he won't extend you. And it needs the whole family or everyone of the name that is in that particular grouping to be behind that one person and keep things going. So, and they also prefer, they have indicated they prefer people who are at least UK based and preferably Scotland based. So that probably rules all of us out. But oh, Barry, Bart doesn't agree. I know there are a
Yes,
few overseas now. Yeah.
I was gonna be
that's
quiet and
fine.
just listen, but I can't help myself. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah. I can see you as well.
Okay.
I can see your reaction to something to say yes or no quite strongly.
I would recommend that you all not worry about your chief here now. Totally irrelevant for several reasons. I believe, first off, I'm Bart Forbes. I'm the president of the Clan Forbes Society. I'm also on the board of the Council of Scottish Clansmen Associations in the United States. I've been around Scottish organizations for a long time. That's kind of my background. You know, Shane and I've been talking a lot, communicating. I also did a survey among our current clans and family societies, try to determine how important a chief or commander is. And there's no correlation between having a chief or commander and success of the organization. That's one thing. Okay. So I would suggest you respond to your members, encourage the organization development aspects of it, worry about that later. Secondly, there's two different kinds of chiefs. There's the chief of the name of the arms, which is only what the Lord Lion determines. And then there's the clan chief. Now, clan chiefs existed 400 to 500 years before the Lord Lion even existed. Position, it's a government role. It's sort of like a patent and trademark office. It was established in 1592 by the Scottish Parliament. And the Lord Lion only looks at heraldry and who is the chief of the name of arms. Now, most clans and families recognize the chief of the arms and name as their clan chief, but not always. Okay, so for example, Clan Somerville just elected their chief. They don't have to go through Scottish government to determine who their family or clan chief is going to be. What many clans and families want to do is to have a chief of the name of arms through the heraldic office, the Scottish government. And that's what the process that Shane was going through. Now, I know, and you don't have to be Scottish. For example, Bob Curry is the commander for Clan Curry. They call it the Learned Kindred Curry. He's an American. Also, it takes a long time to get a commander. I know Clan Bell proposed a commander, and the commander of the name and arms, and the Lord Lion said, no, he only had a convention, a family convention of 25 people. If you want a commander of the name and arms, you need to have a bigger one. So they're back to the drawing board. And finally, the concern is that Dr. Joe, who's the current Lord Lion, is going to be stepping down fairly soon. So his plan was to stay with the job until after the coronation of King Charles III. Now that he's gotten the crown in England and now in Scotland, they'll probably be looking for a new one. So my advice, hang tight, but also just look at your organization, figure out what you want to do. And remember that all clans are extinct hundreds of years ago. So you can be whoever you want, how you want. So that maybe I threw your plans into a bit of disarray. But that's my perspective, and I deal with a lot of clan and family societies on a regular basis. So it's just developing a database of all the clan and family societies and Scottish Heritage Societies scholarships. I'm gonna go back to that afterwards. So those are things I think about. I'd say work on who your people are and what y'all want to do. And I've done the same thing. The current clan Forbes has only been in existence about 4 years. The other one died, just like Shane was saying, with other societies. So you can do what you want to do, and I'll be quiet. I'll mute myself.
No, that's great, and that's, I think you are in line with my thinking. So, you know, I said earlier, the Lord of Lion won't even entertain a clan commander unless you can demonstrate you've got extensive membership with functioning chapters across the world. So we are a long, long way from that. We do have a lot of people interested in at least finding out if there's an eligible heir to the chiefship, and people willing to put money behind that. So I owe it to those people to do that research, and we are getting there. And we are in a position now to at least ask the Lord Lion if the eligible heir we have is eligible. And again, as I said, we have to approach it very carefully. But like you said, there is a difference between the chief of the name and the chief of a family grouping or clan. Yes, and there have been chiefs of the name who were not recognized by the clan as the chief. So yeah, and it's a touchy subject. There's a lot of emotion running in these things. Some people are very adamant in their beliefs and their feelings. Some are more based in fact, and some are more based on desire. And yeah, it's a juggling act, as you well know. But you know, what I'm doing started off as a hobby for me. It's turned into something that's pulled in nearly 400 people now. People obviously find something of use here. I'm proposing a way forward. And again, the emphasis for me is to, like you say, Bart, put in more numbers, get people interested, and see what they want to do. And to me, it's critical that we prepare for a future with more people in it. And that has to mean we are scalable. We have some element of control. We're not just a ragtag bunch of associations across the globe all doing different things, coming up with different stories about the Watson name. So that's where we're at now. And I was just keen to put that in front of people and see if there's any strong objections, basically. Otherwise, I'll just carry on what I'm doing. But also, anybody that wants to chip in, if there's any budding website designers out there, or creative geniuses, or storytellers, or researchers, or just people with stories they want to share, I'm always happy to have you guys come on board.
Shane, I just want to say I'm, super impressed with everything you put together here, and I've seen your organization on the Facebook page. I actually joined it a long, long time ago, but I've been cutting back on Facebook significantly, and just for a lot of reasons. So I haven't been engaging. My, young people, my daughter's going to college this year. They want nothing to do with Facebook, or at least a lot in what I'm seeing. And as we're talking about kind of getting people involved over generations, so it's something for us to think about. And I'm already part of the Insta page, so kudos on that, and seeing how those are coming in. I have limited time, but I'm happy to help on some of the social media and web stuff. I've got a creative background, got a TV background in my first career. So like in some of those things, I would be, love to get engaged and help where I can. I had seen the website once, realized I'd never signed up for it. So you got one more member that I just signed up while we were on here. Yeah, so I apologize.
That's good. That's good. I had some hiccups with that. It was refusing to speak to anyone on Gmail. Because of
that's me.
Yeah, good. No, I get exactly where you're at. It was quite a few years ago now. I was the head coach for the Girls Touch Rugby out here, and I was trying to set up a Girls Touch Rugby Facebook group, and two of the girls looked at me and said, "Isn't Facebook something old people use?" And that was the first time. And like you, I try and steer a little bit clear of Facebook and social media because I've seen the effect it has on my teenage kids. I worry at some point someone's going to flick a switch and the whole world's going to turn into drones. Exactly what they're doing. Although, yeah, Bart obviously knows I'm quite a prolific poster when I'm on holiday.
You know, and a follow-up, you know, kind of a detailed question on the membership levels that you'd proposed, which I, the freeze had checks still across everything. Was that just because as you were talking about annual having eligible to vote and leadership, is this just like a future for
The original slide of this had 1 million notes at the bottom. So honorary membership is something that clan societies will give to someone who's been of, you know, serious upstanding contributions for many years.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Clan chief would be there, or a president who's been a president for many years, or has held positions on the committee for many years. At the committee's discretion, they can award an honorary membership. But maybe I should have know on there.
That's what I misunderstood. Just the associate is like anybody that just signs up. Then that's the
anyone who signs up as an associate.
Gotcha.
Union membership will be free. I see that as part of a family deal. So if people are buying an adult membership as a family, then their kids can join along for free and come along to events or whatever with their parents. Yeah, the notes were a lot clearer, but there were lots of them. So it's not something I wanted to flash up on a PowerPoint.
Yeah, it just had confused me with the honorary, so that makes complete sense. And as I was thinking about like newsletter, now I understand it better, so I will zip it on my follow-up comment.
I mean, this is just a proposal for the very early days of us going for a paid model, because I'm assuming at that point we won't have a massive offering for the members, and we'll still be scaling up. But I would see as we do more and we start to incur more costs, and we attend more events and we spend more money, that may go up. I also see that either the regional chapters will have their own membership structure, or they will have a slight supplement to cover local events, and they'll also contribute to the running of the global thing. But again, it depends who we get, where the interest is. You know, if 98% of our members are in North America, then maybe we need something more North America centric. This is just a proposal. It's not cast in iron. It's just one possible vision of how I see it going. But at the end of the day, if we're going to charge people money to join, they need to get something back for it. But we also have to have some level of access to people who can't pay more money.
Makes 100% sense to me, and I mean, I'm just so impressed, and you can see, like, I don't know what you do for a living, but your organizational skills and experience, and I've been in corporate, I've been, really show through. So kudos and
So I'm the head of conceptual engineering in what we call corporate planning and development. So we are the department in the company that looks after the long-term strategic vision of our oil field. And I know oil is a bad word right now, but we are doing our best to minimize the damage it causes. So yeah, that's kind of, I work in that space, and I'm also the head of the process engineering discipline. And at the moment, I'm actually putting in integrated learning and development programs across the whole discipline. So it's not exactly what I do technically, but it's kind of what I do in terms of leadership.
Well, kudos. Thank you.
Fortunately, I'm crap at web design. And a fledgling on social media. I did join Threads the other day. There is now a Clan Watson on Threads too. But I haven't linked it to Instagram yet. It should be popping up the same stuff, I think, but I haven't worked that part out yet. And I know everyone says TikTok, but I cannot see the fascination. But it's just people scrolling 15-second videos with the attention span of a midge.
Yep.
Anyone else want to chip in?
Hi, Shane. I wanted to ask you about numbers, like the amount of people that are involved, because what you're talking about with a structure like that involves quite a few people and we need quite a number of supporters. I'm just wondering how we're going numbers wise to get anywhere near something that would be sustainable.
And that's kind of where I'm at now, is we are growing in the numbers of people that we're hooking in. What we need to do now is start turning those people into volunteers. And you hit the nail on the head. And as I was saying earlier, we need to work with the volunteers we get. We don't have enough people putting their hands up to put enough hours in at the moment to even think about running any sort of organizational regional chapter. I've got half a dozen or so, probably slightly more, that are contributing to the research, maybe 10 of us, which is great. And I try and post everything I do on there and get feedback from them. I've got the original group. I think Scott's just joined in, but Scott and Kev Riley, who you may have seen on the group, it was the three of us who really started off on the research a long, long time ago. We're all very, very busy, which is why I've now opened up to more people. But I still consult with them offline on other stuff. I've also set up a little group of volunteers who helped me vet this presentation, which I was very thankful for, because they pointed out I was covering far too much material on the slides, which is something I know, but I did anyway. So I have a few volunteers. They're helping as and when they can, but we don't have anywhere near enough to run any sort of organization. So again, as Bart said, and as I'm saying here, we need to really increase the number of people that are not just passing by and having a look, but people who are getting hooked in and actually wanting to get involved. And maybe there's not enough people out there, and that's fine. I'll just keep this as a hobby, and it'll fade away at some point. But if there's enough people with enough interest, and previously there have been, I was talking with the president of Clan Buchanan a while back, and he said that the Watsons used to come and pitch up at the adjacent stall to the Buchanans back in the day. So there has been interest before. I think the problem, as we've touched on with all these societies, is generally this is the kind of thing you get interested in as you get older. So everybody is struggling to get those youngsters in because they just don't seem interested. And I guess that's just the way we all are. As we get older, we get more of an appreciation of who we are and where we've come from, and less about where we're going. The interest has been there previously, and if it's there again, great. If it's not, that's fine. But I'll still keep doing what I'm doing and researching this, that, and the other, and posting stuff. And if people want to come along for the ride, that's cool. And if people want some say in how that ride is steered and what we do along the way, even better.
I think one thing that, good evening everyone, and apologies for being late. One thing that I have noticed in the UK more and more is companies like Ancestry, Find My Past, etc. They are advertising so much more, and it is attracting a lot of interest from younger people. Now that's obviously a massive audience that they're aiming for, and we're only looking for a very, very small percentage of that in terms of the Watsons and those associated to that. But I think that's going to have an effect. If that's happening in other countries, which I imagine they probably are, then that's going to have an effect on bringing younger people into genealogy in general, and then the kind of history side of it that goes alongside that as well. So I think traditionally it has been very difficult to bring young people in, but there could be an uptake just based on that alone, especially with things like DNA becoming more accessible, and everything that goes with that.
Yeah, it's a good point. Some pluses and minuses. Yes, they are popping up everywhere, especially on social media. They're advertising heavily. They're also selling a lot of dud stories to people who suddenly find out they're related to every Scottish royal that ever lived. And I spend a lot of my time on the internet trying to gently dissuade people from that. But again, it's a very passionate subject, and people firmly believe what they read because they've copied someone else's tree from Ancestry. But yeah, you're right. It raises a lot of awareness. I think our job is to try and, as you say, hook into that, but also to make sure the awareness is based on some sort of reality, not a fairy tale they've been sold. Yeah, good point. We do need to reach out to these people, especially if it's pulling in some youngsters.
I mean, I've noticed my DNA match is getting a lot younger. And I mean, I joined the group on Facebook because I'm a historian and genealogist. And so I joined out of interest about surname. I think one of the issues is that different people are going to have quite different ideas about what they want from something like a clan society. I mean, some people want to know, you know, what's art and they're allowed to wear and stuff like that. And other people just hope to get something extra out of it for their genealogy, that they can connect up with other people with the surname. So if you're looking at different people with different interests, that kind of also weakens the sort of focus on following particular directions, like, you know, being represented at events and so on. So
yes and no. I see a lot of the big societies do all of it. So they act as a social hub for people who just want to hang out with people of their name or connect to what they perceive to be their ancestry. A lot of them have genealogists who help members, and I've proposed that on here. So priority for research assistants. If you pay a membership, then we'll give you first dibs. At the moment, it's just a few of us who research anyway, and we tend to help people out. But as we get busier and busier, that's not going to be the case anymore. A lot of people sign up because they want to wear the t-shirt and the tartan and wave the banners. That's great. But I don't see why they can't all live under one umbrella. I don't see them as detracting from each other. If you run it properly and you have the right messaging, they can all be consistent, I think. Maybe.
Yeah, I think you're right. The key word there was big, wasn't it? That you actually then need the numbers so that you get enough people interested in all the different aspects to actually get all the different things to work. So it's yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, there's either the people out there are interested or not, and if we do the best we can to reach them, we'll see who turns up, and if there's enough for this to become a thing, great, and if there's not, that's fine. I mean, that's not going to stop me from researching and meeting other people, and you know, there's always the Forbes and the Buchanans to hang out with if no one wants to hang out with the Watsons.
I think it's important to recognise though how, I mean, the group is not that old as a Facebook group, and in terms of the more formal society that you're building up here, Shane, and with the other supporters that are helping. I mean, yeah, the graph shows it. I mean, I know you've shown me this graph, and we've spoken about it in the past, and various things that are going on. I think there is an appetite there. The one thing I find a little bit frustrating is I would like to see more activity. And if that's a focus going forward, then I think that would be a good thing. Because the numbers are growing, and they're growing pretty quickly now, actually. It's just the activity side of it I think we need to see more of.
Yeah, and that's where we need volunteers. I can do so much, but at the moment I'm trying to run the website, the research, this. I've got a load of things boiling all to keep this thing running, and my hours I have left to organise a lot of stuff is not great. But I don't know if you were here, Scott, but somewhere, yeah. So here I said, I've got this Zoom channel now. We can use it. So I think you were keen on doing something maybe on one of the Watson clusters. I know Joe was keen on doing something on Scottish traditional dress. If people want to just talk for half an hour and have people interested, I'm happy to host it. Yeah, but
Just want to relay the results of a Clan and Family Society survey that I conducted for Costa, and the two most leading indicators of a successful society based on regular increases in membership were online Zoom calls, which you're doing, and also a members only section of the website. Those seem to encourage people to stay with the society. So as I mentioned before, having a chief or commander was not an indicator of a successful society. Doing Zoom calls and having a members only section website are things that people value based on the survey results that I got.
sounds good. I mean, I kind of envisage maybe an online Zoom call once a quarter with an annual catch up on where we're at. And I am already planning a members only part of the website. So I'm looking at how we can have a flavour of what we do and who we are and where we came from on the free-to-air website, and then a lot more detail on the members-only part. We'll go into a lot more detail on genealogies and specific Watson clusters and how-to guides on things like how to do your own research, you know, how heraldry works, how DNA works. So I'd like to have some more detailed stuff on the members-only part. As you say, it's if there's no reason to be a member, people won't do it.
And that's what I do for the Costco website. I have a public blog, but I make sure that it always links into something that only members can see, as you well know. So I use Facebook and Instagram and YouTube to kind of funnel them into the blog and then say, oh, by the way, if you're a member, you need even more information. And that's a good way to build value for your membership.
Yeah, that's the way I see it working. So every summary article will have a link to more details that you can only access if you, for now, if you register on the website, but at some point, if you pay a membership once we get that far. Yeah. And if, again, if there's people out there that want to write stuff for the website, please drop me a line, let me know. If you have a specific skill or interest or area that you research or things you do that you think are interesting or relevant. Anyone else? Like I said, I had a few talking points, but I think they're kind of formalities. We've covered the first one, two, three. Oh, the fourth one, yeah. So Clan Chief's motto was flourished unexpectedly. I don't think that's brilliant if you're trying to build a society, because it kind of starts from a position of failure. So I've subtly changed it in the last few communications to long way maybe flourish, which I think sounds a bit more positive to me. The story I've found, well, actually, Manette, who isn't here tonight, dug out some stuff on the pedigree of the Watsons. And this chap who linked the Watsons of Stockton to the Watsons of Cranston Riddle was proposing that the main branch of that family failed, and it was actually another son who ultimately gave rise to the Watsons of Stockton, and that's where the flourished unexpectedly came from. But yeah, I think it's got quite a negative connotation if you're trying to build something, so I've just slightly skewed that. But I'm assuming there's no objections.
I think it's more unique as well. I mean, we spend so much time trying to explain to people about crests and heraldry and coat of arms and how it belongs, you know, the arms belongs to an individual, and we spend so much time around that, then we probably should have something that's more society based in terms of the motto, instead of just piggybacking off the chiefs.
Indeed. I'm not going to translate that into Latin.
Yeah, I was just going to do that actually, just to see what it looked like.
What does Google say? Good. Anyone else? I don't want to keep you for hours if we're kind of running out. No, so hopefully that was worthwhile. It was me blathering on for some time. Apologies for not sounding like Jamie Fraser. I know people get disappointed, but at least Scott waded in with the right accent.
James, I just want to say that I think what you guys are doing is great. You've done a terrific job. You got some good people involved. I know what it's like to build up a clan society. And if there's anything that I can do as Clan Ford Society president or as Costa board member, let me know, and I'm right there for the button.
Thanks, Bob. And I have to say I've actually valued everything you've done so far. I know we interact sometimes, but I'm reading a lot of the stuff you post on Costco and Clan Forbes, and it's actually steered me quite a few times already. Yeah, and thanks to others, you know, Scott and Michael, you're already putting in a hell of a lot of effort, and it's appreciated. So we just need more of us, and then we can really start to grow something.
Shane, you might have covered this already, but did you cover any of the sort of things we're talking about with regards to formalising the research? And the question I was going to ask you on this is, have you put any thought into one of us, multiples of us, writing a paper really on the research to date, so that it's more not set in stone, but it means that people don't have to constantly keep going over old ground in terms of if they're carrying on the research in any way in the future.
Yeah, I mentioned that we're researching, but you're right. I mean, my whole premise in starting this discussion was that we're posting a lot of stuff on a website that I currently own and manage. And unless we build a sustainable model, at some point that will disappear. So I very much want us to capture what we're doing and stop new generations having to do everything again that we've done, and presumably the previous societies also did that got lost. I've already shared one on Charles Watson's descendants, which was a very brief summary with all the sources noted. I'm working on one, no, sorry, that was for James, wasn't it? But anyway, I'm working on, for each generation, just a summary of who was born, married and died and had what children and where the source material is. I was reading this morning on the Clan Hamilton website. They've got an excellent sort of 12-page document that covers their genealogy in enough detail that you can follow it without it being, you know, a novel. And I was actually thinking something like that would be really useful, especially if it had all the references in it. So people know it's not just an interpretation of history from one person or one group of people, it's actually evidenced, and it is, as far as you can ascertain, fact. So yes, is a short answer. I think we need to put something out like that. Maybe that would be members only as well, eventually, I don't know, with a summary on the main website. Oh, hello, there's a cat anyway. So yeah, if anyone wants to volunteer, that's great. Otherwise, I'll probably get something out at some point.
Shane, I'm Peter Warren. My grandmother was a Watson on my father's side. They were from Lurgan, and then they went to New York. So that's the the family connection that I have. I'd just like to say that one of my cousins here in D.C. is George Watson, who actually the Watson Escarpment in Antarctica is named after him. So I don't know if there's little facts that I could help contribute.
Yeah,
definitely a branch of the family. I could send you some material too.
yeah, I posted a to-do list a while ago, and one of the things on there was to start just researching names, places with the Watson name in them. So there's places all over the world that are Watson this and Watson that, and I thought it'd be fun to have a series of just write-ups on why they're called that. So anything people have got on would be great. And if you want to put a few words together or take a picture or something, even better.
Absolutely, yeah. I did a little write-up on the. There's one connection we have is the Watson Hotel in Bombay, India. He was set up by an English Watson from, I think it was Cumbria. That's where their family came from. But he was the site of this luxury hotel that he had in Bombay was the place where they first screened films. I think Lumiere came in and did that. And of course, Bombay is now the international big film center for India. But it's a good connection that we have.
Yeah,
we can put it on the site.
Yeah, but I didn't actually know about the Watson connection. Yeah, I spent a good few months in India, not far from Mumbai. If I'd known about it, I would have gone.
Huh. Yeah, it'd be nice to put up a plaque or something from our society on this dilapidated old building, but I think it was one of the first steel framed structures they had there.
Okay, so we need to run off a few plaques and send them around the world, and people can just rivet them to the side of buildings and go around. Yeah, but
I have to jump off, but I've really enjoyed it. Thank you for putting up with me during the Clan Watson. And again, whatever Clan Forbes can do to help you or Tosca, just let me know. I think what you guys are doing great. Keep the discussion, keep doing what you're doing, and I wish you all the luck, and I will support you in any way I can.
any last comments from anybody?
Just a thank you, Shane. I think it's probably been said already, but really appreciate all the work you've put into this, mate. I know we speak not quite daily, but on a regular basis, and I've seen firsthand how much time and effort you've put into all this. So it is appreciated by members of the group. I haven't actually looked to see how many folk have made it along tonight, but when you put up your updates and things, there are always a really good response to them online. So I think it's quite clear that people are appreciative of it. And just on behalf of everybody, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, I am very appreciative. Thank you very much, Shane.
Yeah, no problem. And thanks to you guys for sticking with it and helping out as you do, and showing the enthusiasm. Good. Right. I'm going to clock off then, I think. I will see if the recording's any good and if I can use some highlights. Presume no one has an issue with that. I'll probably post some of the material as well. I don't know if I'll post all of it online, but I'll post some of it. And like I say, I've got the Zoom channel now, so anybody who wants to post anything, or if you just want to have a hangout, whatever. I don't know what people do nowadays, but it would be good to see some maybe quarterly webinars on material of interest. And like I say, maybe an annual catch up on where we're actually at and how things are progressing, and what the strategy is looking like and what people want. Cool. Well,
All right, I have to go. It was
Yeah.
nice to see you all.
Thank you for your time, guys. Appreciate you logging in.
Thank you.
There you are.
Thanks, everyone.